Okay, so our processing is all done. So what I'm doing now is I'm letting the canner lose pressure on the gauge before I take the pressure gauge off. And you want to do that. I let it completely cool down before I take the pressure gauge off. And what I ended up making was the bottom layer is beef stew in pints, and the top layer is chicken stew. So I have a recipe that I use. Let me see if I can't pull it out for you. This is my old recipe that I used. And so let me go through this with you for my beef stew. So I used 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Now I just used a regular vegetable oil. You can use whatever olive oil if you want. Okay, you can substitute that. It says 2 pounds of stew beef cubed. I only had a pound and a little over half. So, you know, 1.5 tablespoons of salt. I use pink Himalayan salt, but you can use regular salt. A half a teaspoon of black pepper. I do not like to add the black pepper until I cook it, so I didn't use that. 8 cups of beef broth or stock. So instead of the beef broth, I used the Weiler's beef cubes, and I added that when I cooked it, and then I added a cube to every jar. So yeah, that's what I use for my beef broth. 1 onion diced. I don't use diced onions. I use the minced onion. Like I said, I like McCormick. I used a minced onion organic, minced onion. So I use that. And you can eyeball it to taste for what you want. 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. I use a little bit more than that. I used about a tablespoon. Okay, 1 bay leaf. Now I will say this about the bay leaf. You want to put the bay leaf in there, cook it with the bay leaf, and then remove the bay leaf. You do not want to put your bay leaf in any of your jars, okay? So just be aware of that. 1 teaspoon of paprika. I actually put a little bit more than that. 8 carrots sliced, and 6 potatoes cubed, and 3 stalks of celery sliced. Now, instead of doing all this, I used mixed vegetables, frozen mixed vegetables, and I had 2 cans of the Green Giant mixed vegetables, and I just drained the water off the mixed vegetables and then added it in. Okay, so in a large pan, you're going to heat the oil, you're going to add the beef, and cook until all the sides kind of turn that kind of grayish cooked look. Add in your spices, vegetables, and hot stock. Now what they mean by hot stock is the 8 cups of beef broth. Cook together on medium heat for 20 minutes. And then you're going to remove your bay leaf. And then you're going to ladle into your sterilized jars and clean the rims. Now, I use Lysol wipes to clean my rims, but you can use a wet washcloth if you want. You want to put on the hot lid, finger tight the screw, the screw part of the lid. You want to finger tight that down, and then you're going to put it in your pressure canner. You're going to add, okay, so you're putting hot fluid into your jars. So you want to bring the water in your canner, depending on what canner you use. My canner, I have to put in about 2.5 to 3 quarts of water. Your canner might ask for a different amount. And I bring that water up to just right when it just starts boiling before I add my jars, because you don't want to put hot jars in the cold water or your glasses on your jars will crack. So you don't want to do that. Okay, so you want to put hot jars into hot water. Okay, and then you're going to process it. Now, what they mean by process is what I'm doing here. Once you get it in your canner and you put your canner lid on and you tighten it all down like I did. Remember I told you I had to put Vaseline around the edges of both the lid and the pot. That way I can take it off. Okay. Once you got that going, you don't put your weight on right immediately. What you want to do is you want to have it bubbling out a little bit and a little bit of steam coming out for a couple minutes before you put your weight on. Okay, then you put your weight on. In my case, I'm on 10 pounds for where I'm at, and you're going to process it according to the size of jars. Now, I do 90 minutes, whether it's pints or quarts. You can do whatever you want, okay? Use your best judgment, right? You're adult. Use your best judgment. I do 90 minutes just because I want to make sure everything is cooked completely, and I want to make sure that is processed completely. So now all I'm doing is I'm waiting on, as you can see, the pressure gauge is falling. I'm waiting on the pressure gauge to fall all the way to 0. Then I'm going to take the weight off. Now, you can do that, or you can just wait for it to completely cool and then take the weight off. I normally wait until it completely cools because I don't want to get steam coming out of when I take the weight off. Then when it completely cools, you want to open up your canner and you're going to take your jars and you're going to put your jars on a thick towel. Okay, so you want a thick towel, not like a real thin dish towel. This is not going to do you any good. Okay, so you want like a thick pad or a thick towel to put them on. And you're going to when you take them out, you're going to tighten another half turn on the rings. Okay, now your lids are in two separate parts. You have the lid and then you have the ring. So when you put it in your canner, it's just finger tight. It's not tight. When you bring it out of the canner, you tighten it down. And the reason you're tightening it down while it cools is because you want that rubber that's on the bottom. Okay, here's a Prego lid. You want the rubber, this little rubber piece right here, to seal to the glass. So you have to have a little bit of pressure on it for that to do that. And then you're going to put them on your pad here, and you're going to let them sit. I normally let them sit for 24 hours so that they are completely cool. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to take the rings off. I'm going to be careful when I take the rings off because I don't want to pop the seal on the lid. So I want to take the rings off. I'm going to very gently check each jar to make sure the lid has sealed. Now, any of the jars that the lid doesn't seal, you can put the ring back on it. You can put that in your refrigerator and you eat that. Okay, you can eat that immediately. You can eat it, like you normally would with a jar of beef stew that's been opened. Okay, now, once I have it cooled jars and I've took the rings off, everything's sealed, I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to write on the top of the jar. And the reason I write on the top of the lid is because you don't want to reuse lids for pressure canning. You can reuse the lids if the lids are still good when you take them off. If the lids are still good, you can reuse them for your dry goods. But you don't want to reuse them for your pressure canning. You want to use fresh lids unless you got Tattlers, and that's a whole different ballpark. So what I do is I write on the top of the lid the date and what it is inside the jar. Now, the reason you want to do that is because sometimes once you get into canning, you could have 50 jars and they all look the same, but they could have different ingredients and they could be slightly different each row of your canning jars, right? So you want to write the date on there. Now, once you put them on your shelf, you want to keep them in a darkened place, away from extreme temperature change. So that you want to keep them in a cool, dark place. And I have found that you need to use those up within 2 years. You might be able to press it past 2 years. Ball says to use it within a year. I say you can actually go to 2 years. Don't go more than that. Okay? If you go more than that, you're liable to have deteriorated food. So it might taste okay, but it's going to give you problems. You know, you're going to get bad stomach problems from it. So that's my tip for today, and it's took me about 4 hours total. And now I'm just going to go do whatever I want to do. Go do my laundry, everything else, and let my jars and my canner cool down, and then I'll let them sit here on the stove for probably a day before I go and put them in my shelving. Bicycle!